All right, so you've sent over a ton of really interesting stuff about relationships and their impact on mental well-being.
Hmm.
And it looks like we've got articles from the NHS, NIH, Emory Healthcare, and the Better Health Channel.
Yeah, like it.
So I guess today we really want to dig into those and see what we can learn about how these connections, both with ourselves and
Yeah,
with others, really impact both our mental and our physical health.
absolutely.
Sounds like you're really fascinated by this link between strong relationships and just feeling good overall.
Oh, for sure.
Cool. Well, let's jump in. And I think the best place to start is with that foundational relationship we have with ourselves,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
the NHS says is really where it all begins.
Yeah, the NHS makes a really good point there. That inner dialogue, how we treat ourselves, that's the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Like it sets the stage for everything else.
I see.
And they highlight that self-esteem. It's not just about, you know, feeling good in the moment.
Yeah.
It actually impacts our ability to take care of ourselves.
Right.
And, even more importantly, our resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So, our ability to deal with challenges and bounce back from setbacks.
Okay, so we're not talking about like this constant state of, over the top positivity.
No, not at all.
Like, what I really like about the NHS's approach is that they focus on this idea of positive thinking, but in a very practical way.
Right.
So becoming aware of those automatic thoughts that we have all the time.
Those thoughts that are always running in the background.
Exactly. Are they generally supportive?
Yeah.
Or are they, kind of critical and undermining?
Yeah, and it's amazing how often those negative thought patterns are just operating under the surface.
Mhm.
We don't even realize they're there.
Right.
So the NHS says, shine a light on them, bring them into your awareness, and then challenge them.
Okay.
So it's not about, forcing yourself to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
It's more about finding alternative perspectives that are more balanced and realistic.
So they have this great example where you might have the thought like, I had so much to do today and I got nothing done. I'm useless.
Right. Classic negative self-talk.
And the NHS suggests reframing that to something like, okay, not every day can be super productive, and that's fine because I can try again tomorrow.
Much more compassionate and probably more accurate, too.
Right, so it's about shifting from self-criticism to self-understanding.
Exactly. And the NHS points out that doing this consistently can really help build our self-confidence.
Yeah,
It's like a key part of developing a healthier relationship with ourselves.
that makes a lot of sense.
And they even have video on reframing unhelpful thoughts,
Oh, cool.
which could be really helpful for people.
So we've talked about that internal relationship.
Yeah, the foundation.
But we're obviously social beings, and those external relationships are equally important.
Absolutely. The NHS makes a really strong argument that having positive connections with others is fundamental to both our happiness and our health.
Mm-hmm.
They can really help us combat loneliness
Right.
and make us more resilient to stress and anxiety.
Right. So what are some of the things that make those external relationships thrive?
Well, the NHS highlights a few key ingredients.
Okay.
Mutual respect, being able to offer and receive support, and most importantly, open and honest communication.
And those sound pretty straightforward, but I guess it's the consistently putting them into practice that's the challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
So that open and honest communication thing really resonates with me.
Mhm.
The NHS points out that being able to share your feelings
Yeah.
and really listen when your partner or your friends or family are sharing theirs, that can really strengthen those bonds.
Like it's a lubricant for the relationship.
Yeah, it helps everything run smoothly.
Reduces friction,
Eases anxiety.
protects our mental well-being.
Exactly.
And it's not just about talking, right?
No, it's about understanding.
Okay.
The NHS emphasizes this idea of active listening.
Okay.
So making a conscious effort to understand what the other person is saying.
Like repeating it back to them.
Yeah, summarizing it, asking clarifying questions, showing that you're really paying attention.
Absolutely. And it can prevent so many misunderstandings.
Mhm.
And it shows the other person that you value their perspective.
So the NHS also suggests making time to check in with each other regularly.
Right.
Like it's preventative care for our relationships.
Exactly. Catch those little issues before they become big problems.
And I guess sometimes it can be difficult to express our feelings verbally.
Yeah, for sure.
The NHS acknowledges that and suggests things like writing a message or a letter.
Yeah, find a way that feels comfortable for you.
The important thing is to connect and share in whatever way works.
Hmm.
Now, life isn't always easy, and relationships are going to face challenges.
Definitely. The NHS points out that life's ups and downs are going to impact our relationships.
Yeah, we might get irritable or withdraw or just feel more sensitive.
It's natural.
And it's in those times that open and honest communication becomes even more important.
Creates a safe space for mutual support.
So the NHS has some advice for both the person who's going through something difficult and for the people who are trying to support them.
Yeah.
And setting boundaries is really important.
Yeah, figuring out what kind of help you can realistically give.
Right. Whether it's just listening or offering practical support.
And sticking to those limits.
Because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. You can't support others if you're running on empty.
And it's also important to remember that self-care isn't selfish.
No, it's essential.
The NHS reminds us to take time for ourselves and pursue our own hobbies.
Mm-hmm. Keep that sense of individual identity.
And if things are really tough,
Yeah.
reach out to someone outside the relationship for an objective perspective.
A trusted friend or family member.
Someone who can offer support.
Right.
Now, we can't talk about relationships without talking about conflict.
It's inevitable.
The NHS says disagreements are normal.
Yeah, part of any relationship.
But it's how we resolve them that matters.
Constructively.
If things get too heated,
Take a break, cool down.
come back to it later. The NHS has these really helpful reflective questions to help with conflict.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Things like, what meaning have I given to this situation?
Or is there a difference between the facts, in my opinion?
Right. They encourage us to step back.
Examine our assumptions.
Consider other perspectives.
And that question, what advice would I give someone else in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
That one's really powerful because it helps you detach a bit from your own emotions.
And that last question, is there another way to look at the argument?
That one's all about finding common ground.
So it's about understanding each other
Yeah, working towards a solution together.
instead of just digging our heels in.
Exactly.
Now let's zoom out a bit and talk about social wellness in general.
Okay.
Emory Healthcare really emphasizes this idea.
Yeah, they talk about how those connections with family and friends, they have a huge impact on our overall well-being.
Mm-hmm.
They say that strong social wellness,
Which is basically having healthy relationships and being able to interact well with others.
it's not just a nice to have.
Right, it actually has real health benefits.
Yeah, and they're backed by research.
So we're talking about things like a stronger immune system,
A healthier heart, lower blood pressure,
living longer.
even a more balanced endocrine system.
Wow, that's amazing.
It really shows how connected our social lives are to our physical bodies.
Yeah, and the NIH echoes that.
They say that our social connections can actually influence our biology.
So taking care of our social health is just as important as taking care of our physical and mental health.
Absolutely.
So if these connections are so important,
Mm-hmm.
what are some practical things we can do to improve our social health?
The NIH lays out 6 strategies. The
Right.
first is connect with others.
Okay, that seems pretty obvious.
Yeah, but they give specific examples,
Yeah.
like joining hobby groups,
Right.
volunteering, staying in touch with loved ones, sharing your skills, teaching others.
I like that emphasis on shared activities.
Yeah, they also talk about participating in performing arts, helping others with errands, being active in your community.
So many possibilities.
Their second strategy is take care of yourself while caring for others,
That's so important.
especially for caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
They recommend getting organized, asking for help, taking breaks,
Yeah.
maintaining your own hobbies, joining caregiver support groups.
Taking care of your own needs so you can better care for others.
Exactly.
Okay, what's next?
The third strategy is get active together.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, they say having a social component can really boost your motivation to exercise.
Makes sense.
So find an exercise buddy, join a walking group.
Take a dance class together.
Yeah, lots of options.
All right, strategy number 4.
This one is shape your family's health habits.
Okay, so being a good role model.
Exactly, especially for kids.
Like making healthy meals,
sharing those meals
being
together.
active as a family,
Yeah, and limiting screen time.
and working with caregivers and schools to reinforce those healthy habits.
It's a team effort.
Okay, what about number 5?
Bond with your kids.
That's crucial.
They have some great tips for this one.
Like what?
Praising good behavior, giving kids meaningful chores, using kind communications,
Mm.
spending quality time together,
Mhm.
solving problems together, setting limits on personal tech use.
So being present and engaged.
Exactly.
And the final strategy.
This one's all about building healthy relationships.
Okay, a big one.
Yeah, they cover a lot of ground here.
Like what?
Being aware of how others influence you, sharing your feelings,
Yeah.
honestly communicating your needs,
Mm-hmm.
listening empathetically, disagreeing respectfully, avoiding negativity,
Right.
expecting respect and honesty in return.
And being willing to compromise.
And they also talk about protecting yourself from harmful relationships,
Yeah.
setting boundaries, saying no.
And they even recommend learning more about healthy and unhealthy relationship dynamics.
Yeah. And they mention a resource called thehotline.org.
That's a lot to unpack.
It shows that building healthy relationships is an ongoing process.
So now let's flip the script and talk about the impact of loneliness.
Yeah, the Better Health channel really dives into this.
And they don't sugarcoat it.
No, they paint a pretty stark picture of the negative consequences of loneliness.
And it's not just about feeling sad.
It can actually impact our physical health.
Like how?
Disrupted sleep, higher blood pressure, increased stress hormones, weakened immune system.
Wow.
And it can also lead to decreased contentment, antisocial behavior depression.
And even suicide.
That's serious.
That's really sobering.
The Better Health channel also points out that older adults are especially vulnerable to loneliness.
Yeah, especially if they're less mobile.
But they also highlight how important it is for older adults to stay socially engaged.
Mm-hmm.
They say it can improve their quality of life,
Yeah.
increase their overall satisfaction, reduce the risk of dementia and cognitive decline, and even lessen their need for domestic support.
That's incredible.
And it's not just older adults.
Right.
Younger people who are isolated can also face increased risks.
Like what?
Higher chances of obesity, inflammation, high blood pressure.
Which can lead to long-term problems like heart disease, stroke, and cancer. So it really is important for people of all ages.
Throughout our entire life.
The Better Health channel makes this really interesting point.
What's that?
They say that even for people who have very few other risk factors for mortality,
Like they eat well, they exercise.
social connection is still a critical element for their health and well-being.
It's that powerful.
And it's important to distinguish between loneliness and solitude.
Right.
Solitude can be a good thing.
Yeah, lots of people enjoy spending time alone.
It's that feeling of unwanted isolation that's the problem.
Exactly.
So if someone is feeling lonely, what are some practical steps they can take to build those connections?
Well, the Better Health channel says it's important to nurture those relationships that bring you joy
Okay.
and try to have some form of social interaction every day.
Even if it's just a quick chat with the cashier at the grocery store.
Yeah, just something to break up the day.
So they also talk about these 3 types of connections.
Yeah, intimate connections, relational connections, and collective connections.
So intimate connections are those close relationships with loved ones.
Right.
Relational connections are those people you see regularly who you share interests with, like colleagues or people in a hobby group.
Mm-hmm.
And collective connections are those broader group affiliations, like a church or a volunteer organization.
And they encourage you to think about whether you have a good balance across those different types of connections.
I like that.
They also suggest taking a look at your social habits.
Okay.
Are you stuck in old patterns of interaction?
Great.
Are you avoiding certain social situations?
And really thinking about the kinds of relationships you want to build.
Exactly.
So they also recommend reaching out to existing contacts.
Yeah, call your family, email a friend.
Meet up with a former colleague.
And for people who want to expand their social circle,
Mm-hmm.
they suggest striking up conversations with people you encounter in your daily life.
Like at the gym or the library.
Yeah, but obviously be mindful of safety in public places. They also recommend joining clubs or groups, volunteering, and checking out what your local community center or library has to offer.
So many options.
And the Better Health channel emphasizes that it's okay if you don't find success right away.
Yeah, keep trying.
Experiment with different approaches,
They even mention a booklet from Beyond Blue called Connections Matter.
specifically for older adults.
Oh, that's cool.
And in the end, they say that social connection really boils down to sharing time experiences and stories and listening to others.
It's about that give and take,
Exactly. And that's what builds strong supportive networks.
which in turn benefit both our minds and bodies.
And they also touch on the broader societal impact,
Oh.
saying that those social ties make communities happier and more productive.
So it's a win-win for everyone.
Absolutely.
And it's important to remember that if you're struggling with your relationships or feeling lonely,
Yeah.
there are resources available to help.
Both the Better Health channel and the NHS mention several options.
Like talking to your doctor or a counselor.
They also mention organizations like Relationships Australia,
Bond Blue.
LGBT Hero for LGBTQIA+ individuals.
And the Citizens Advice Bureau for practical and financial issues.
So you're not alone.
It's good to know there's support out there.
So after this deep dive into all these resources,
Mm-hmm.
the message is loud and clear.
What's up?
Strong relationships in all their forms.
With ourselves, with loved ones, with our wider social network.
They're not just nice to have.
Yeah.
They're essential for our mental and physical health.
Couldn't agree more.
So for our listener,
Yeah.
think about one small thing you can do today to nurture those connections.
Okay.
Maybe it's challenging a negative thought
Right.
or sending a message to a friend.
Or looking for a group that aligns with your interests.
Just observe the impact, even if it's subtle.
And don't forget all those resources we mentioned.
They offer tons of information and guidance on building healthy relationships.
It's a journey.
A lifelong one.
And probably one of the most important investments we can make in our well-being.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.
Take care.
Bye.